from passion to impact and how to plan for community organization success for your community organization. If you'll just excuse me, I've got two monitors up here and I'm just trying to make sure I can see everything that I need in order to do this properly. So thanks again for your patience on that. Okay, so we are, this thing keeps moving and I don't want it to. Sorry about that. Okay, so we're gonna be talking about passion to impact. And part of that process is obviously why we're here. And the reason that you're here at this leadership conference is because you want to make an impact in your corner of the world, in your community. Your organization is small but very mighty. So as we start out, I'm going to talk just a little bit about some of the bigger trends in the nonprofit or grassroots association space and talk about why you might actually be more powerful than you think you are. Then we're going to get into sort of the meat and potatoes of this presentation, which is the framework for success. We're going to be looking at strategies, tactics, and questions that you can ask in relationship to your community organization. And at the end, hopefully we'll have some time for us to all give each other feedback, and you can ask me any questions about the presentation. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. Again, we're here today because we all want to make an impact in our corner of the world. We want to benefit positively our communities, whatever that is, whether you're in Tailholt or you're Oakland, California, or the middle of, Kansas City, Missouri, wherever you are, you're here, you do this work, this sometimes backbreaking work, and, emotionally intense work of doing community organizing because you want to make an impact in your community. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. So you are small but mighty. Community organizations fill critical needs in communities that aren't otherwise met, whether it's a government agency or a religious organization. There are things that happen in everybody's community that there's still things that we need to do. And so that's where you step in with your passion and you say, our community needs this. And as a result, we're going to do our projects to help fill those needs. Our grassroots organizations are led by passionate individuals that want to see some sort of change happen, fill this need, or better their community, their corner of the world. Now, this is interesting information that I got when I was getting my master's certificate in philanthropic studies. And it made so much sense to me when I learned this. And because of the work that I do with small nonprofits and small grassroots organizations, 70% of the 1.5 million nonprofits are actually represented by small grassroots associations like yours. Whether they're, in the nonprofit world, there are 1.5 million registered nonprofits. So that's the IRS designation. And the overwhelming majority, that 70%, are represented by small organizations. Those organizations that don't have any staff, that bring in less than $50,000 a year. The vast majority are represented by small organizations. Yet, all of the predominant information that's out there about what makes a good organization and how grassroots or how nonprofits should operate is all geared towards what that 30% does. So everything that you might have heard over the years about what makes a good organization might not actually be true, because they're kind of focusing on organizations that have a lot bigger capacity. And so this is a topic that's been fascinating me for years and years, but especially in the past 4 to 5 years when I started learning more about this world and seeing that there's not a lot of good stuff out there for small organizations. And I wanted to come in and start helping orgs do more of their work more effectively using tactics and strategies that actually work for them. So I'm going to just break real quick and let you know that we do have the chat function open. So as we're going through this information, please feel free to use the chat function to ask any questions. I'll periodically stop and check in and see what's out, see what questions folks have, or tidbits of information you'd like to share. But I think, again, it's important that to note that the predominant literature that's out there does not represent what really happens in small organizations like the one that you're running. The aggregate impact of our small community groups is what makes up the vast majority of the work that's happening in our communities. Because remember, 70% of those registered nonprofits are small ones. And I was once reading an article that said, you know, if, for example, if you're, I didn't really love this example because it compared termites to community organizations, but it was saying, you know, one termite isn't a problem, but if you have a whole bunch of them that can, you know, collapse your building from the inside out, no matter how big it is. But what that does is it shows that the aggregate impact of all of the groups, everybody out there who's affiliated with CCO, and those organizations that aren't affiliated with CCO, these teeny tiny nonprofits put together doing good work out there is what makes the big difference. And again, I have a little bit of beef with the fact that we don't have any, you know, major information out there about how we should operate these 70%. So for me, I don't think that's very cool. So I started to put together this framework called From Passion to Impact, where we really look at the different elements that help small organizations do good work in an effective and efficient way. So here's the Passion to Impact framework. And like any good nonprofit, whether you're the 30% or the 70%, we've got all kinds of good acronyms in there to help you remember how to move forward. So I'm going to go through each of these individually. And as we're going through each one of these steps, we're going to cover three things. The first one is goals. Now, goal is an overarching sort of like the big umbrella of what you're doing. And then there's a strategy, which is sort of like the strategy that you're going to take to get to where you want to go. What is it that we're going to do? And then on a very practical level are the tactics. So that's the third thing that we're going to cover with each one of these steps. So again, we've got goals, strategies, and tactics. And each one, as you go down that list, gets a little bit more and more narrow. And I always like to remember this as tactics are practical. And so like practical and tactical kind of rhyme. And so tactics, that's how I always try to think of these things as what's the practical thing that I have to do in order to make the strategy work to achieve the goal. So let's start with I, which of course is the I in impact, which is intention and ideas. So our goal in the first step is to get clear on why your organization exists, and to think about what kinds of projects and programs do we want to do to better our community. It's important so that we can understand the purpose of the organization, what it is that keeps us going every day when we have all this work to do. And the great thing about doing this through a CCO organization is that you get to approach your programs and your project and your entire organization in a way that embraces and celebrates what it means to be Cherokee. And that's becomes sort of like the centralizing theme for everything that you do. Now, the strategy for our goal is perhaps to hold a meeting with an interested group of people and just start talking it out. The tactics for what happens at that meeting would be things like sharing your ideas, putting everything on the table without judgment. And of course, it's important to make this fun. As you see throughout the course of this framework, a lot of what you're doing is the background work. It's a lot of meetings. And so it's so important to make it fun along the way. This is something that, making life fun and having fun in every day is something that I try to do and my family tries to do. So like one of the things that we did was come up with a few family values. So the things that we always kind of prioritize in everything that we do. And one of it is just having fun. So that even something mundane and awful, like having to wash the dishes, becomes fun. And so we do that by turning on music and listening to a new band or maybe an old band that we don't know that much about. So we try to, infuse fun into everything. So a way that you might do that with your community organization is, for example, making sure you have if your community is healthy and safe, you can go to a new restaurant that nobody's ever tried before, maybe like a French restaurant or something that's kind of interesting and outside of the box. Or maybe everyone brings their favorite kind of drink or their favorite kind of cake to the meeting, and just have something fun and unique that makes what could otherwise be a boring meeting a little bit more fun, just to keep the meetings exciting. Let me see, here we go. So here are some questions to ask yourselves while you're having this meeting and having fun while you do it. What are our values? What's our mission? And what's our vision? Who makes up our community? Now, this is really important for both the on-res organizations and the at-large organizations. So I'm just going to take the Kansas City group, for example. You're in Kansas City, and so your community is made up of folks who are, within a certain, 50 or 100-mile radius around Kansas City, and they also happen to be probably Cherokee people, which is great. And so you want to think about who's making up our community, both sort of geographically, but also sort of in those other ways too. Identity. You want to think about that as you're answering these questions. This one's really, the third question on here is really important. What does success look like for us? And this is an important question for folks to answer, because I think so often we kind of get in these ruts where we just say, okay, we're doing this because this is what we've always done. And you don't really start thinking about like what could make it better, or what would it, when we're starting out our organization or we're revamping it, we need to have an idea of what it means to be successful, so that we know whether or not we're actually achieving those goals or not. And since you're with a core group of people who are interested in this to begin with, you want to ask yourselves, why are we excited about this? I think that's really important for a core group of people who are interested in something, to share that with one another. This is why I'm here on a Thursday night at 6 o'clock when I could be doing something else, because I'm excited about this for these reasons. So that's just an important thing to be thinking about as you're talking through the I in impact, which is ideas and intentions. Another question you might want to ask is, what experiences do we want our members to have when they come to a meeting, or they come to an event, or we're doing a project or a program? What kind of experience do we want people to have as they are encountering us? As we're out promoting our organization, what do we want people to experience when they come into contact with us? The second question here, how is the world a better place because of the work that we do? Now, this is just something that I think is really important for folks within the organization to really understand and embrace, especially if you're in a leadership role, because it helps you to remember why you do the work that you do. And then finally, why does our community need us? If we want to use the capital city Cherokees, for example, there's plenty of people who have Cherokee heritage that are either from Oklahoma, or their ancestors were from Oklahoma, and they want to embrace what it means to be Cherokee and connect with what it means to be Cherokee and the Cherokee Nation back in Oklahoma. So why does the community need these projects and programs? Because there's nothing to fill that need for connection and identity. So, for example, so these are just some questions that you might ask as you're going through this first step. So the next piece that we're going to focus on is making a decision. That's the M in impact. Now, this is a really engaging quote here from an entrepreneur named Marie Forleo. And she says, clarity comes from engagement, not thought. And if there was ever a sort of implementation quote that strikes true, I think it's this one for me, because in order to really understand what it is that you're trying to do, you've got to engage with it and not just sit around and think about it. So why is that important? Because when we're making a decision on what program or project it is that we want to implement, it's because our goal is to start doing something. We want to make a positive impact in our community. But if we just sit around and think about it, we're never going to do it. So your goal here is to make a decision and to start something. It doesn't have to be perfect the first time. Most likely it won't be. Every single one of us, as we were learning to walk, for example, we fell down a lot, but we kept going. Same thing if we were learning to talk, we messed up, we babbled a lot and it wasn't perfect. But in order to become better at it, we just have to do it more. So it doesn't have to be perfect the first time, and nobody expects it to be. Just do something and see how it works. So the strategy for making a decision is to determine what projects and programs we want to undertake and in what order. And it's important as you're going through this process to align your ideas and your intentions with your values. I want to bring up a personal experience that I had with this. When you're aligning your ideas and intentions with your values, that's, putting your values on paper and really talking that out with your group in the first step is important, because again, that's what people are going to associate when they come into contact with your organization. So there was a nonprofit that I was working with for a very short period of time as a volunteer, and they were having an event. Now, this organization, their primary goal was to help men who were coming out of addiction, that they were starting their recovery process or program. And I think it was for narcotics and alcoholics. And they had a fight night event as a fundraiser. And so people would buy tables and they'd have dinner. But it was really strange to me because they were serving alcohol at the event. And I just thought, well, that seems a little out of alignment with the values of this organization, which was, of course, to celebrate sobriety and recovery. And so why were they doing that? And it just kind of seemed off. And there was another nonprofit that had reached out to me once, and they wanted to write some grants for their cancer society. And the cancer society was specifically designed to help former firefighters who had developed lung cancer because of their exposure to certain chemicals in the process of doing that. However, when I went to meet with them, I happened to meet with the president of this organization in his home, and he was a chain smoker. And I just thought, this doesn't make any sense to me, because again, your values aren't aligning with your with what you say you want to do, which is to fight cancer. And I think in order to be taken seriously as a cancer organization, should probably not be smoking. So in any case, that's the importance of making sure that your decisions on what kind of projects and programs you're doing and how you're doing it aligns with your values. So tactics on actually making a decision. You are going to, once again, meet with your core group of passionate people and approach this step with kindness, respect, and low ego. So remember, in the first step on ideas and intentions, we are just absolutely throwing out there any ideas that we have for what the organization could be. But after all of that is on the table, sort of as our brainstorm, we have to decide one or two projects that we can do that are going to move the needle on what we want to do as an organization. And that means there's going to be a lot of projects or programs that we don't choose at first. And so you want to be sure to approach this step with a very low ego and understand to be kind to others and respectful of everybody's ideas. Be honest as you're making a decision about what projects or programs you want to start, about your organization's current capacity, your abilities, and your resources. And be sure not to overcommit or overextend any particular person within the organization. So what that might look like, for example, is, oh my gosh, we want to eradicate homelessness in our county. Now, that's not something that you can take on as your first project. What you might be able to do is get involved with Habitat for Humanity and help build one house on an afternoon, for example. So that's just like taking a teeny tiny bite of something that kind of goes towards your bigger vision. And this goes back, this one here, reminding you that this is an iterative process. Just because you didn't decide to do this project now doesn't mean you can't do it ever. It just means that, considering your capacity, abilities, and resources, this wasn't the right time to do that. This is really important, and I just want, we'll come back to this at the end of the presentation, because this is a cycle. You go through passion to impact many times throughout the life cycle of your organization. So here are some questions to ask as you're going through the second step. What is the smallest viable project that we can take on that is going to help us move the needle towards our bigger vision? And that, again, might just be something as small as, hey, our folks, our volunteers are going to help out building a house with Habitat for Humanity one afternoon on a Saturday. And that helps us to understand, the process of putting together a home and, the labor that goes into that. And yet it also helps us to get a bigger picture of homelessness in our community. Does this project or program align with the overall mission, vision, and values of our organization? Again, this is something that kind of, you'll lay out your mission, vision, and values in step one, and you want to make sure that what it is that you're doing is actually helpful. An example is like cyberbullying. You don't want your, if you're trying to teach youth not to cyberbully, then you want to make sure that the programs that you're doing, that as you're representing your organization, that you're not being nasty on Facebook, for example. Okay, the P in impact, that stands for planning. So we want to do, and what we want to do in this stage is to lay a foundation for the thing that you're doing, to create a roadmap for yourself and a way to know what you're going to be doing and how to stay accountable. The strategy for this is to co-create a strategic plan using SMART goals. Now, if you've never heard of this before, here's another one of those fancy nonprofit acronyms. SMART goals stand for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. Sometimes time-bound also, I see it as timely. So I just want to point that out. But what we're talking about here is making something very specific rather than, for example, we want to do, eradicate homelessness in our county. We're going to get really specific about what that looks like. We want to provide housing for 3 people within our county in the next 2 years. That's a little bit more specific. Measurable. Again, we have 2 years. We have 3 people, 3 homes, get 3 people off the streets. That's measurable. So we know, between now and 2 years from now, whether we can measure that or not. Attainable. Is this attainable for you? And if a goal isn't attainable, again, right now, it doesn't mean it's not ever going to be attainable. Relevant. This is really important for organizations to consider if this project or program is even relevant in their community. A lot of times folks have really good ideas, but there's not really a need for this thing in the community. And time bound helps you to stay accountable and keep yourself partially measured out there, but also gives you a yardstick to see whether or not you're achieving your goals. So some of the tactics for planning is to have another very fun meeting or just a informal discussion with your core group and begin assigning tasks to individuals. So we've got our plan and we say, here's what we're going to do. Here are all the individual steps that we need to take in order to achieve the goals. And now we're going to start assigning pieces to our members. Now, here are the questions that I would start asking. What resources do we need in order to make this project or program a reality? Does this project or program align with the overall mission, vision, and values of our organization? This is really important. This is something I always come back to. And we'll talk a little bit about mission drift in a bit, but this is where we just say like, oh, we want to do everything, and it doesn't actually align with what your overall goals and mission is. What are the gaps between where we are now and where we want to be after this project or program is implemented? And these are kinds of things that you start filling in with your SMART goals. And you can also reach out to other organizations that can help you fill these gaps. So the A for impact stands for action. The goal here is to execute the plan. You did all this great work doing all your meetings for the ideas and the intention and making a decision and putting your plan together. And now it's time to actually make the thing happen. So we do this, again, our goal here is to execute the plan and do something positive for your community, for the people that you serve. The strategy here is to do the work you said you were going to do. Put on that event, implement the project, build that playground, whatever it is, just do it, like Nike says. Now, Fozzie Bear, he's a guy that cracks us all up, and he's got a great spirit here. Frank Oz, if you don't know, is the voice and the chief puppeteer for he's the voice of Fozzie Bear. He's also one of the chief puppeteers for the Muppets, and he also did the voice and puppeteering for Yoda in the Star Wars franchise. And he said this, my husband's a big Star Wars fan, and we were watching an interview with Frank Oz one day, and he said this, and it stuck with me. This has been about 5 or 6 years ago that I heard this. He said, if the vision is there and you want something, then nothing stops you. You just do it. And no matter how dangerous or uncomfortable, or how many long hours you work, you just do it. And to me, that really struck a chord with me, because I thought it's so true. Now, I'm not, let me just disclaimer here, not advocating that anybody do anything crazy dangerous or cause bodily harm to yourself or others. I think it's more of like a figurative danger. This is, if you're really passionate about something, and I know every single one of you watching this right now is passionate about something, that you'll put in those long hours and you'll do something that's maybe a little bit uncomfortable so that you can make that impact in your community. But just like Fozzie Bear, make sure you make it fun. Look at this guy. He's got this cool scarf on and this hat. He's having a great time, even though he's out there doing the hard work, just like you. Okay, so that's where the tactics come in. You do whatever it takes to get the action done. And that's what's going to help you get to the end of your project. So you may find in the course of planning and acting that you need the folks in your organization need some training on something, or they need some more capacity building for your organization. That's okay. You always have CCO here as a resource to reach out to when you need those kinds of things. You can also reach out to other partners or collaborators in your community for help. You can go beyond your own organization, the capabilities and expertise of the folks inside your organization, and seek help elsewhere. It's okay to ask. Maybe that should be another thing that the A stands for in impact, is ask. Ask others to help you in doing your actions so that you can create the impact you want in your community. It's important that you follow through on your own responsibilities, those things that were assigned to you. And without overextending yourself, if you see that maybe somebody else is struggling, go ahead and reach out to that person and just say, hey, what's going on? Again, with no judgment or kindness. And you may find it's a simple fix, or it's something that can be easily remedied, that there's a solution around the problem. If the person says, I'm really having a hard time meeting that, noon deadline once a week to post the thing on Facebook, you can say, well, okay, that's fine. Like, when is convenient? Well, Thursday at 6 o'clock. Okay, that's fine. We can handle that. So these are just things to be thinking about, because I know that this part here, this is the action part. That's the part that takes so much work. That's the part that takes, the long hours, and you're doing it after work and after you put the kids to bed, or, after you've cleaned the house and you're exhausted and you just want to go home and you just want to go to bed. This is the hard stuff. And this is where you need to be gentle to yourself, but also make sure that you're following through on those things that you said, but don't overcommit yourself, because burnout is real and it's okay to need a pick-me-up. If you're involved in any sort of community organizing, you have experienced burnout yourself, or you have been around others who have, and it's okay to say no, and it's okay to take a step back, or let others draw those boundaries for themselves. And it's okay to need a little bit of a pick-me-up. So I know one friend of mine who does this work, and they just say, I don't take calls on Sundays. That's my me day. I'm just going to turn off my phone and not take calls from anybody. And so that's an okay self-care kind of thing, to draw boundaries around your own time. So here are some questions to ask as you're acting, as you're actually engaging in the project or program that you're putting on. Who can take on what responsibilities, and be realistic? I know that you all out there watching this this has happened to you before, because you wouldn't be a community leader unless at some point you've overextended yourself. If you're doing an event and your job is to, you've made up the list of all the things that need to happen to make your project go off without a hitch, and one of them is cooking the spaghetti, and one's putting the centerpieces together, and one's baking the bread, and one's making the desserts, and you sign up for all of those things. Then it comes the night before, and you've got to cook 100 servings of spaghetti and put the centerpieces together and do this and do that. That's not good for you. That's how you create burnout. So we want to make sure that we're assigning tasks equitably and within people's areas of expertise. And then when you find that maybe throughout the process of going through this, you don't have someone who can do something that needs to be done, ask yourselves, who do we know that can help us get through this? Who can do pieces of this that need to get done, but we can't do? It's okay to ask, because, here I just, in the last breath, I said, draw boundaries around your own work. But there are people who want to help. So if we're all sort of pitching in where we can, and also taking care of ourselves where we can't, then we're in a good shape to do the great community work that we have ahead of us. Once again, are we embracing our values through our actions? When we're out there talking to folks, are we being kind? Hopefully, and I'm sure everybody out there is. Are we really embracing the values of our Cherokee organization while we're out there doing the work? Another very important question to ask as you're planning and acting is, how much will this cost, and how will we fund this? If you didn't catch the session earlier today, I did one on grant writing. You can go catch the replay, and I know that there's some other capacity building and fundraising sessions that have been a part of this conference. You can go back and take a look at those, and kind of help build up an understanding of budget and funding and fundraising. Then, of course, very important is how do we get the word out about what we're doing? This is something that you would want to put in your plan and make sure that you're acting on as you're putting that together. So we are getting close here. We have 2 more letters in our impact acronym. And this is that consistency creates change. I got 3 C's in that one. That was really creative. Goal here is to keep going, making tiny bits of progress towards your bigger goal all the time. And this doesn't have to be, you don't have to do an event every week or an event even every month, but just doing tiny little things that are progress towards your bigger goal and you're aligning with your values and your vision is important. So this is where you begin to see the results of everything that you've been doing and all the hard work that you've put in. And as you see, we're like 5 letters into the, 5 steps into the process. So all of that stuff that has to happen before is important before you can start to see the change. But it's critically important for sustainability over time. So this is where being consistent and continuing to do the work is what makes the change. But you have to do all this stuff at the front end to help you get here and make sure that you're continuing to do this. The strategy here is to assess what works and what doesn't work along the way. You want to be sure that everyone is being honest and encouraging to both yourself and to others. And where you can't get it done yourself or with the organization, go outside and ask for help. So it's very important to assess what's working and what's not working, because then you're able to identify those gaps, which was something that you would have done in one of the earlier steps of this. What's working, what doesn't work, and how can we fill those gaps? Is it just something that we need to learn, or do we need more people? Really figuring out what is the issue there and how can we fill that up? Now, some of the tactics for this, again, we're meeting with our leadership team, with our volunteers that helped with the project. And we're having open conversations and asking good questions about what worked and what didn't and how we might be able to do better next time. So being consistent with your projects and programs is helpful, but you don't want it's critical, but you don't want to do too much too quickly, because that'll create burnout, and it might also go into a little bit of mission drift, which is up here in just a moment. So the passion to impact framework, like I said, it's iterative and you keep doing it over and over and over again. And that's when, as you're getting towards the end of one project and you start thinking about the next thing, you want to make sure that you're just taking incremental steps. What's the next smallest viable project that we can do to move the needle on our vision? But you don't want to take on too much too fast, because you'll overwhelm yourself and you'll go crazy. There's a local animal shelter, bless their hearts, where we got our precious dog from. She passed away in January, but she was wonderful. 4 years of this wonderful dog. And I sat on the board with them for a while, and they had this big problem where they always were trying to do too much too quickly. And bless their hearts, what it ended up doing was burning out all of the board members, and that nobody wanted to help any longer because they would just burn through everybody. We don't want to do that. So if instead we focus on one thing right now, we say we're just doing this right now, then that's what you're doing, and you focus on that and see where you can improve in that. And as you get better and better at that, you can start to add in new projects. So for example, they did all the time. There was like an event once a month, and it was overwhelming. Putting on an event is, everybody, I'm preaching to the choir here, everybody on this call knows that putting on an event is so much work, and usually the return on investment is not very high. So that's the problem with this animal shelter, is that they were just wanting us to, find sponsors and, put together gift baskets and find venues and sell tickets like every other month. And it was just too much, where perhaps what we should have done instead was focus on one area of need at the animal shelter and focused on that, and said, our goal right now is to put 5 dogs once a week in new homes. How do we do that? And not sit there and constantly be drumming up new events. So that's just an example of what happens, why it's important to just focus on one thing at a time. Advance here. Again, continuously assess what's working and what's not working. Again, without judgment to yourself or others, and just pivot as necessary. So for example, in the animal shelter, we could have said, this isn't working. We're spending too much time putting together events. What we need to do instead is have one-on-one donor conversations with 10 people who we think might be able to donate bigger dollars to our organization, and pivot away from doing so many events that were burning people out. So this is just one of the tactics that you can use as you're creating change consistently throughout your community. Okay. Mission drift. This was something that I just talked about or touched on briefly. Mission drift is what happens when you start taking on too much. So, we do fight nights on the first Friday of every month, and we do that so that we can bring money in. And then on the, second Saturday of every month, we do a breakfast, and we're also doing after school reading classes for our community, but we're also walking dogs at the local animal shelter, and we're doing this and we're doing that. That's what you call mission drift. This is when you're starting to kind of get away from, go outside of what your organization is all about. So if your organization, the thing that you want to do is hold, supplemental reading classes for kids ages, in first, second, and third grade once a week, do that. But don't start also bringing in, art classes and basketball. That, it's not just like anything kids want to do. It's about supplemental reading programs for kids after school and ages, 6 to 9, for example. Questions to ask during this process when you're assessing things with your fellow organization members is, how did the implementation of this project that we just did turn out? What worked and what didn't? What were the, what was easy for us? What was hard about this project? And sometimes you'll find that, hey, something that I thought was going to be super easy really wasn't. And so the next time we do this or, another project similar to that, here's where we're going to need some help. Here's where we know that we can ask our folks outside of our organization to help. What can we learn from this experience? And that's a lot of different stuff about our strengths, our weaknesses, the gaps in our capacity right now, the need for partnership or collaboration outside of the organization. And this is very important. What did we learn from this experience about the community's needs and desires? For example, if you put together the after-school supplemental reading program for kids from first to third grade and nobody shows up, maybe you're learning that there's not a reading issue, or maybe it's a marketing issue. Maybe nobody knows about it. But what you really got to look at what it is that the community needs and desires, as well as what the organization wants to do, or else you're kind of just spinning your wheels for nothing. But I feel like most of the organizations who I'm talking to today have already kind of done a community needs assessment here. What additional resources, support, or training do we need in order to do the next project even better? So that's a fun question. And again, this is about being honest with yourself, being kind and encouraging and supportive, and not having ego about this. This can be something that I think anybody who I'm talking to today, you're in this session because you're a community leader and you've done community organizing before and you love doing this and you think you can do it all. And maybe next time, don't, do one less thing and see what resources or support do need to be there for the next one. All right, so here we are at our T, the last step in the iterative process of passion to impact. And T is all about talking about your successes. The goals here are to increase your publicity, increase your credibility, and to grow your group so that you have more people to pull from for the next time. This is the fun part. This is, all about getting noticed for the great work that you're doing. You want to develop some compelling stories about your project or program. So let's say that you did have a really successful after-school supplemental reading program. In the fall semester, you helped 12 kids ages 6 through 9 increase their reading scores by X amount of points. That's really great. That's a great thing that you want to share with your community. Maybe it'll encourage other people to get involved. Maybe there are students, high school students, who are looking for volunteer hours for an honor society, and they need to know who to go to fulfill those hours. And having a story out there about your program is something that they can get involved in, and it helps to grow your project. So this is the fun part. You get to talk about all the cool stuff you did. Delight in that limelight. Find publicity and other kinds of outlets to showcase your great work. This, again, gives your organization more credibility too, because then maybe the next time you want to do it, you say, maybe we can get a $3,000 grant to do this and help us get some more of the things that we need, or maybe we can pay small stipends to those students who are helping us out. We can see the great work that we did do, and now the local foundation wants to support us. Talking about your successes also helps you to foster your existing relationships and also create new ones. So that is one of the important parts about talking about your success. You can say, hey, this, the such and such local business sponsored our project for $500 in the first time, our pilot project. It went off great, and they got success, we experienced success, and now somebody else might want to come in and partner with you for the next iteration of whatever it is that you want to do. And telling people about your work is a great way to grow your membership. Showing folks that you're doing good work in the community attracts people. It's sort of, I think, what they call like inbound marketing. So rather than going out and saying, look, hey, you should join our organization, showing people, demonstrating through publicity that you've done all this great work actually it attracts people to you. So that's fun. What is a compelling, so these are some of the questions that you'll want to ask as you are in this particular phase of passion to impact. What's a compelling story that we have about our project? I'm trying to think of an example here from one of our local community groups. For example, they do, the Brushy community does a giveaway twice a year, and one of them is for winter clothes for families who might not be able to afford jackets, scarves, hats, and gloves. They give away a ton of brand new stuff, and that's the kind of story that should be told. And so they can put together a story that says, we had 250 jackets, different sizes and colors, donated to our group, and we were able to give that away to families in need in the community. And here's why you should get involved next time. Another set of questions to ask is, what outlets could we use to tell our story? So, the Brushy community puts together this great example of what they've done, but then where does it go? They could use the local print media, so like the newspaper. Another one that's becoming really popular right now are podcasts. So there's like everybody and their brother has a podcast now, and including myself, I'm getting ready to start one that showcases these great community programs and projects that folks are doing. And so this is something that you could be thinking about. What kind of podcasts are out there that relate to the kind of thing that we're doing? Are there any summits or conferences like this one, or other local conferences, or monthly gatherings of community leaders? Can you go to those things and talk about your story? Can you do it through Facebook or Instagram, or TikTok's becoming the new one, where you can just get on there and tell people your story? And those are different ways and different avenues and tactics that you can use to tell your story. This method is sort of what we call like follow the leader. So who has done something similar to what we're doing, and how did I hear about that? And in that sense, then you want to see how they got featured in such and such public forum. And then what additional resources, support, or training do we need to do this better for the next time? So this is sort of where we start to wrap this up and get to the iterative process here. So with that, we say, just do it again. And this is not, just a simple linear process. It's something that, you might start one and you might get to, 70% through the process in one project, and then say, okay, we're far enough along here. We're going to start another project and do that one. And you can start, moving these things along. But again, don't create burnout for yourself, and make sure that you're, able to follow through on everything that you have. So with that, I'm going to ask if you have any questions for me. And Tammy, if I don't know if you have anything you want to add to this for our organizations, but please, I don't see anything in the chat. Don't know that anybody's had anything to pop in there, but I'm certainly excited to share questions or to answer questions, or if anybody should have them. I'm going to go ahead and end this show, but I can't get to my screen. Okay, there we go. So we have 31 participants. Certainly somebody has a question or an idea about something.
That was a great presentation, Lindy.
Thank you.
Just did a great job, and some wonderful ideas for our communities on planning and for them to be successful.
Thank you.
And so I really appreciate you doing that today. I want to remind everyone to be sure and come back. We're going to take a short break, and we're going to come back for our award ceremony at 5 p.m. So please log back on. And Lindy, thank you so much. Looks like there's some questions coming in.
Yes, this is great. Thanks, everybody. So Susan asked, what type of things should we post on the Facebook page for the community organization? Susan, I think that the things that I've seen being most effective and sort of on target for what organizations are doing are things that are relevant to the organization. So for example, that might be obviously any events that you guys are, any events that you're having, any events that CCO is having every week. We always do something for every Thursday. There's an at-large, well, it's really for anybody. It's not just at-large organizations, but I don't remember which Thursday of the month it is, but there's always a government relations update. And so you can learn about the things that are happening there. CCO will post that on their Facebook page. You can share it to yours to get it out to your members. So anything that CCO is doing, anything that your organization is doing, make an event for that and post that on there. I think that those are some great places to start. We can certainly, I've done a couple of those Thursday presentations where we've talked about what's best, how to engage folks on your Facebook page. So you can certainly go to the CCO channel on YouTube and try to check that out. And Tammy, I don't know if you have any other suggestions for resources for where folks can learn more about the best way to do Facebook community organizations, but feel free to pop that in now. If you want.
No, that's just, that's just search it out and post it on Facebook, and you can find things posted on Cherokee.org. Just any resource, always email any of the CCO staff. We're always happy to give you our resources. So
Rhonda asks, I'm a new at this. How do you get people to volunteer? So Rhonda, that is a fantastic question. The answer is you ask them. And I've done presentations before specifically on volunteer, like how to do volunteer recruitment, management, and engagement. If that's something that people are interested in, I don't think I've done one for a Thursday presentation. So maybe that'll be the next one I do, Tammy. We'll put that on the calendar. Because the short answer to that, and it's a very important question, because that's something that we so often struggle with as community leaders is going, I mean, I said it like 15 times in this presentation. It's like, ask for help, get people involved. But there's an art and a science to doing that. So it's a really good question, and one that I'm not able to answer in the next 2.5 minutes that we have in this session. But I think if you, Rhonda, if you just keep an eye on the Facebook page, I think maybe that'll just be the next presentation that I do on Thursday. So keep an eye out on the CCO Facebook page for when that one will be up. And then you can always, every time that we do a presentation live, it's also uploaded to the CCO YouTube channel. So you can go check it out there. But the most important part is just asking folks for help, hey, and being specific about the task or the thing you want them to take on. So is it, I need your help cooking that spaghetti, or can you bake 3 dozen cookies for this event? Or, hey, 15-year-old nephew of mine, I need help figuring out how to do TikTok. Can you help me? Something like that. So it's about asking and being very specific with the ask. So I've got just a couple more questions. Lynetta, thank you so much. I'm happy to help. And Kevin said thank you, so you're very welcome. Sky said she's new to doing this, and she's gotten active during the pandemic. So how do you do engagement virtually? That's the $1 million question right now, Sky. Everybody is having to pivot to doing things virtually. Again, there are tons of resources on the CCO Facebook page, as well as the YouTube channel. So please check those out. Anybody that I don't get to your question in the next minute, please do feel free to email me at lindy@epcollaboration.com, and I'm happy to answer, have a fuller conversation. It's everybody's saying thank you. You're also very welcome. We have 1 minute, and then Adam's going to kick me off here. He's going to shut down this party. Okay, so Wade's asking about the best way to do a needs assessment for the community. SurveyMonkey, email, Facebook requests haven't yielded great results. That's another $1 million question, Wade. And I think another topic that we could cover in a Thursday session. So Tammy, I'm writing those down, and I think that volunteering and doing a community needs assessment are great topics for the next couple of Thursdays. So thanks everybody for your time.
That's great
today. And I think that Adam's gonna shut us down. I hope everybody has a great evening. Thank you so much for joining us today. And Tammy, thank you for all your hard work, and Adam at CVent who's put this all together.